to the Purple Pocket Podcast, and it's your boy R.A.P. You know what I'm saying?
Yo, what's up, everybody, man? We tapped in. We got our boy Joe here, man. Joe SPINOSA. Am I saying that right? Joe SPINOSA?
Yeah, you got it.
Perfect, man. Joe SPINOSA, man. Known as Kirk Cousins' #1 fan. I had to reach out to him, man. How you doing, Joe?
Oh, doing great. Honestly, we're at that time now in the sports calendar where we're just ready for some reports out of training camp. I don't know who here's a basketball fan, but Woj puts out Celtics are interested in Kevin Durant. The world blows up because we're just dying for something, especially being a Red Sox fan. Baseball season is not going too hot right now, so I feel like we all need some football talk.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Big
for
Poppy
sure.
going to Hall of Fame alongside two twins, Jim Cott and Tony Oliva, which is about time. I was living in Fort Myers, Florida during spring training when we released Big Poppy. Released, not traded. Released him for nothing, Big Poppy, and it's haunted the twins ever since.
Yeah,
Kirk
thank you
Cousins
guys for
burner
that.
said my best fan.
You're
He
welcome,
said my
man.
best fan, Kirk Cousins burner, man. He's on here.
Oh,
You know
here's
he
the
had to
other guy,
tap in.
Kirk Cousins burner. Yeah, you're his biggest fan, he says.
That's our boy, man. All right, so Joe, man, first question, so you're not like a Minnesota fan, though, right? You're just Kirk Cousins. You're a Patriots fan, is what I've seen, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So you just got into Kirk Cousins, and I've watched your interviews, of course, and just kind of tried to get a background on you a little bit, man. And so how did you really become a Kirk Cousins fan, though? Let the people know how you became a Kirk Cousins fan.
Long story short, I was a 12, 13-year-old football fan, sports fan in Boston. Huge Pats fan, still am. I love Tom Brady, like you can imagine. Anyone who grew up in Massachusetts has been.
Right.
But I've always loved roster building across all sports. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a GM, and I wanted to be the GM of the Boston Red Sox. So I've always had like a roster building, look ahead sort of approach, even when I was a little kid. And the Colts were moving on from Peyton Manning. And obviously Brady and Manning was kind of my whole conception of football. Yeah. Patriots had just lost their second Super Bowl to the Giants. Brady was turning 35. Colts were moving on from their Hall of Fame quarterback. I said, well, we don't need to move on for Brady now, but why not bring in a guy, play behind him for a year or two, and see what happens? Because at the time, no one other than Favre that 1 year in Minnesota, no one had really played well past the age of like 38. Honestly, that was the magic number.
Right.
So I just started looking at guys who were going to be in the draft. I knew that the Patriots, obviously we never pick high in the draft, probably weren't going to even spend a first-round pick. So I was looking at guys in the Nick Foles, Kellen Moore, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins tier. And I don't know what it was. Again, I was like 12, 13, but something drew me to him. I was watching some of his clips, and I watched all the Gruden QB camps, and I was drawn to Kirk Cousins, and I hitched my wagon, said he's going to be the next Tom Brady. That was the exact wording I said as a kid in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I was like that ever since. I went to a small Catholic school, like 5 minutes outside of Boston, and every dress down day, we had a couple a month, I'd wear my knockoff Kirk Cousins jersey, and that was it.
Yeah. Well, we probably know like the window's probably closed, right? Realistically, of him being Tom Brady. Like, Tom Brady's the GOAT. I don't think he can get there, right?
It's funny because at the time, and again, Brady was still great.
Yeah.
But he had 3 Super Bowls, which obviously was unreal. But he only had 2 of his MVPs, and also he was kind of the game manager. He hadn't won a Super Bowl as the guy because he never had an elite statistical season. It was always the Belichick defense. Then he started to put up good numbers, but the Patriots went a decade without winning a Super Bowl. And so Tom Brady winning 2 more MVPs and 4 Super Bowls since then, obviously, has cemented him, but he was actually declining. If you look at his numbers from his MVP year in 2010 through like 2013, he was showing decline, and the Patriots drafted Garoppolo. So that was interesting, and fans don't really know that if you're not from New England. But even in New England radio, they were talking about moving on from Brady. So that was kind of how it all started.
Yeah, man. Hey, that's nice though, man. It's good to have people though that really appreciate Kirk, because there is a lot of Vikings fans that don't really appreciate him. And I gotta admit, I was one of them, at the time. This year, I'm all in on him. And we saw, so Dave sent me your list this morning. I think I seen it last night, but I couldn't spot Kirk for some reason. I don't know. It was like one of those, like,
He was
I
expecting him to be in the
spies.
top 10.
Yeah, I was
probably.
expecting him to be higher, you know, but Dave was like, you know, Joe has him at 33, you know, as a top 100 players or whatever going into this season, right? On your Twitter. And I gotta agree, man. I honestly think he might be higher. And this is coming from somebody who really never had faith in him from the beginning, you know. But I think this year with the new coaching and everything, I just think he's gonna be good. And hopefully he can be Brady-esque, you know, this year. So I'm looking forward to it, man. And it's good to have people like you that have a lot of faith in them, that aren't really Vikings fans on the outside looking in and saying, listen, you guys actually have somebody. You know what I mean? Like, you need to appreciate your boy, because there's a lot of teams that wish they had a guy like Kirk, you know, for sure.
Since I'm talking to a Patriots fan, and I brought this up before, but Bill Belichick did a sat down interview for a documentary of sorts, and he told the story of how he turned down the defensive coordinator job in the Minnesota Vikings back in the early '80s. We just lost Jerry Burns. We got a new coach. He said, "Hey, let me think about it." Called us from the airport and turned down the job while he was waiting to get on his plane. And then the rest is history. Not many people know Bill Belichick is a defensive-minded coach. He got carried off the field by the '88 Giants defense. So people don't realize how, you know, he's had these incredible offenses, but he's a defensive-minded coach at first.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you know that about Belichick turning down the Vikings job?
Oh, I mean, then he obviously would not have had that close relationship with Parcells.
Yeah.
Which obviously, I think led to him coming to New England with the whole Jets thing. And it's just, I'm a big historian of the game, of all sports, as much as I can be. I'm only just turned 23.
Right.
And
but you're doing big things, though, man. You really are, man. And you definitely, I mean, to me, you already somebody special, man. Like I said,
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's honestly like, I still think that I'm just like the kid. I mean, who just makes some charts and whatever.
Yeah.
And I try to be as objective as possible. That's why I'm high on Kirk, but I have him as my 6th ranked quarterback. It's not like I have him better than Rodgers and Mahomes. I do my best to put bias aside and just look at the data. And also, I've watched every Kirk game since he became a starter. So I watch him as pretty much the way any Vikings fan would. I've watched pretty much every snap of Vikings football since he's been there.
So I got to ask you, because, I mean, you having him as the 6th best quarterback, now that's going into the season this year, or has that been the past couple years, or is that this year's ranking? He's the 6th best quarterback going into the season, or what?
Yeah, I have him as the 6th best going into this year. I could argue that he was probably 5th.
Wow.
Last year. However, I'm so high on Justin Herbert. I think that Justin Herbert's going to be talked about the way Josh Allen is now. Super talented, huge arm. And he came out a little bit raw. People were talking about he was very polarizing during his draft. And I'm super high on him. So I have him ahead of Kirk. And then Brady coming back. I can't dip Brady below the top 5, even though he's going to be 45 just after the year he had. And then I think the big 3 are Rodgers, Mahomes, and Allen. Obviously, I can't put.
Yeah, you got Aaron Rodgers number 1 in your top 100. Yeah. How do you feel about that, MC Rap?
Yeah, I mean, being Minnesota, man. Like, yeah, we're kind of hurting about that, Joe, man. You got to fix that list, bro.
I know that that would not go over too well with most of my followers, but I do my best to just be objective. And Aaron Rodgers, he's Aaron Rodgers.
You got to
admit, he is unbelievable.
Yeah, trust me, we know, man. We compare
Mahomes to Rodgers all the time because of his off-script throws and stuff.
Yeah, they're 1A and 1B. I always go back and forth. I just think that Mahomes, and again, he's still only 26 years old. He'll have a little bit. He'll have more bad games, and I know Rodgers obviously didn't play too well in the playoffs this past year. But I think Rodgers has fewer bad games than Mahomes and Allen, which is why I have him a tick above them.
Yeah, for sure, man. Hey, that's crazy, though, that you got him at number 6 for real, though. I mean, that makes me feel good, though, that somebody sees him that high, you know, because there is a lot of Kirk haters, you know, and I'm sure you run into them when you post things about him and people are like, yo, like you're tripping, you know. And I probably would have been one of those guys a couple of years ago if I was on Twitter. See, I'm new to Twitter, so I mean, I'm just now getting into it because I started my podcast. So
that's how me and Rap met, is because
me and him actually met about.
I went on his comment section, one of his videos.
Yeah.
I did a video about Kirk Cousins not taking any blame for losses, and I commented, that's all he does is take blames for our losses. And then he goes, hey, we should do a show together.
Yeah.
Sure enough, we've been doing a show for a couple months now.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that, Joe?
Before we go, since we're talking about rankings here, he has him at 6. I had him at 8. You had him at 10.
Right.
But here he's made this quote, and this is often brought up on our show, is Kirk Cousins is better than Kyler Murray today, and Kirk Cousins will be better than Kyler Murray in 5 years. If you could, tell MC Rap here why you think Kirk Cousins will always be better than Kyler Murray.
Well, I think that Kirk Cousins, and maybe this is my Brady bias getting proved wrong, that Brady didn't age. And I know, again, Brady is a total outlier. I'm not saying Kirk's going to play till 45, but he's only 33. He's going to turn 34 next month. He wasn't a full-time starter until he was 27 years old. I know he's taken some hits with this Vikings O-line, but still, compared to a lot of QBs of the past, he has relatively not had many injuries. So I think that this is a level that Kirk Cousins can sustain. So Kirk Cousins, again, if he's better right now, I think Kirk Cousins will be pretty much every bit as good in 5 years when he's 38. I honestly do see that because the way he takes care of his body, he does the TB12 method, and he has a style that will age very gracefully. And then Kyler Murray, I don't really see a lot of progression, and he is an underrated thrower of the football. He has a great deep ball, but because of his size and how much his running opens up passing lanes, I don't see a lot of progression because, and you don't wish injuries, but a guy who's running that much at his stature, either you have to cut it down a little bit or you're going to risk getting injured. And then if you cut down on the running, you got to think nothing happens in a vacuum. Every time the defense has a split second to not worry about you just taking off, fewer designed runs, more selective scrambling, it makes it so much harder to complete passes and all of these different things. Plus, I think that Cliff Kingsbury, I'm trying to blank on the Cardinals GM's name, are just not good. And I think that they're going to have a hard time building around him. I mean, they've wasted money on guys who I think are pretty much washed, like JJ Watt and AJ Green.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So, and then with him, if they did that with him on a rookie deal, I think it's going to be a confluence of things. So yeah, that's why I'm lower on Kyler.
He signed up for $46 million a year for the next 5 years.
Kirk's a bargain. Kirk is a bargain.
Yeah, it's a bargain compared to that. And you bring up a good point. At age 33, Fran Tarkenton went to his first Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and he had a
you did a video on that.
It was he was negative 20 games in the wrong column. It was had 20 more losses than wins going into his 33-year-old season. So.
But Joe, this is one of my gripes. All right, with your ranking. Now, I like it. I'm a Minnesota fan, but I gotta ask you though,
mixing it up.
What makes you believe that he's better than Lamar Jackson though? That's the one that I, really, if anybody stands out, I just gotta say, like, Lamar Jackson I look at Lamar Jackson as a generational talent. And I know you were saying about the running and all that, but I mean, would you right now, if you were building a team, would you take Kirk over Lamar Jackson?
In a heartbeat. And there are, if I were starting a franchise,
right?
Never mind for right now, I have Lamar. And this doesn't include Deshaun Watson.
Right.
I excluded for various reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
I have him as the 13th quarterback.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And and not only do I have him 13th, I have him right there with Kyler Murray and Derek Carr. That's kind of like the bottom.
That's exactly where I had him.
That's what I consider like the franchise guys. And I'll say this. There's a bigger difference between the guys after that. Matt Ryan, Ryan Tannehill, I think Mac Jones is in that. There's a bigger difference between that next tier and then the Carrs, Jacksons, Kylers than there is with the next tier up, which is Stafford, Dak, put Kirk in there. I'd put Joe Burrow in that tier as well. However, Lamar Jackson, I know people will say it's lazy, and in many ways it is, to compare him to Cam Newton.
Right.
But if you look, Lamar Jackson's had one amazing year. And Lamar Jackson's 2019 season, I would put up there with some of the best seasons we've seen. Obviously, you have 07 Brady, 84 Marino, 04 Peyton. Those are like record-breaking seasons.
Culpepper 2000.
Well,
Dante Culpepper in 2000, 39 touchdowns.
Yeah. Was it
only reason he didn't get the MVP is because of Peyton Manning.
Yeah, that is it.
Yeah. Because I have a very rudimentary sort of metric I made, and this was back like when I was a freshman or sophomore in college, and it was just era adjusted stats. So I took 5 stats that have been available since the AFL NFL merger, and I would just sort of weighted baseline it for those baseball fans, kind of like OPS plus, ERA plus, just kind of. I didn't go really into the scoring environment, but obviously football doesn't have different dimensions of park, so you don't really need to do that as much. But just sort of went through and made it an even playing field because eras are so different. And Culpepper's 04 season was in the top 10 ever.
I was 04, my bad. I said
2000. But Lamar Jackson's MVP season was unbelievable. And I think it was a slightly better individual season, but very on par with Cam Newton's MVP year. And the Panthers went 15-1, made a Super Bowl. And within 3 years, Cam was washed and pretty much done. Yeah. And there are injuries. There are things like that. I think Cam was a little bit more reckless with how he played. I think Lamar Jackson's smarter. But if you look at how much Lamar Jackson's declined since, again, it's only 2 years since he had 2 seasons, but he went from MVP to Pro Bowler-ish to last year he was good, but by those standards, meh, with an injury. Yeah. So that's why I'm very iffy on Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, because is it because the injuries can happen more than not, like when you're that type of quarterback, like the injuries can happen and maybe because I think that's what happened with Cam too, because wasn't it after like his shoulder or something was injured, that's when he just pretty much started declining, and that could be from running into people over and over again, things that quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins and Tom Brady, they obviously don't do things like that, so their bodies are a lot more. They save their bodies, you know what I mean? And I guess it does make sense. I don't know, man, Joe. I just feel like Lamar's a little better, but that's just my opinion.
I always bring up that they figure out running quarterbacks out, and he can't rely on his accuracy like other players and staying in the pocket. And people think like Mahomes is a mobile quarterback. No, he's not. He's mobile in the pocket and he can get outside and can throw on the run, but he's a guy that's not going to try to get that first down with his legs as much.
Right.
Even Aaron Rodgers runs more than him.
Yeah. PFF Eric, who I know a lot of Vikings fans don't like. I'm surprised I'm not blocked. Yeah. But he put out a post of designed runs, and these aren't scrambles. These are just like scripted running plays the same way that would be a carry. And Lamar Jackson has like over 300 in his career. And then if you factor in all scrambles, he's at over 650.
Wow.
That is, if you look at running backs and how production for most guys, you'll have, even Adrian Peterson, who was able to hang on longer than most, there was a clear sort of breaking point in his early 30s. And there's a carry threshold. And again, I go back to that. Even if you are still effective, every split second, every time that the defense does not have to put out a QB spy or can have a linebacker hang back in coverage a split second longer because they know you're the threat of running is less, it makes it so much harder. And that's why guys like Brady and Kirk, who are like extremely non-mobile,
right,
never had to change their games. Then you have guys like Rodgers and Russell Wilson who tweaked it a little bit. They don't scramble quite as much, but they are great enough passers where they still can escape, but their arms and their passing ability is
They don't take hits. I mean, they'll run out of bounds. They scramble for the first down, but don't try to get the extra yardage.
Yeah, definitely. So Joe, I gotta ask you too. So realistically, do you think Kirk Cousins will be in the conversation this year, MVP conversation this year?
I think he will be. I don't think he'll win.
Right.
The level of season he'll have to have is so much greater. And I often compare Kirk in the Vikings team overall, very similar to the 2016 Falcons. However, and I bring this up, and this is a conversation we could do on another day,
right.
With all the fans who say draft a quarterback. And there's because there's been a lot of really talented young quarterbacks to come in the league the past 4 years. It started with probably Mahomes and Watson in 17, Allen and Lamar in 18, and then Burrow and Herbert in 20, whatever. But for like a 10-year span, honestly, after that 2004 and then in 2005 Rodgers, from like 06 to 2016, the best quarterbacks were, I would say it was Russ, who was a third rounder. Kirk is up there. And then you have like Ryan and Stafford, who are good, but they're not top in the conversation, I would say, as top 10 all time, the way I think these other guys can be.
Right.
So that's where it's harder, because an MVP level season 5 years ago, it's going to look a lot different than what an MVP season is now, because you could win an MVP. Brady won an MVP in 2017 with 32 touchdowns, 8 picks, and 4,500 yards. That's a standard Kirk season. And
that's true. That's true.
But that's not cutting it, especially if you're named Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true, man. They do kind of hate on my boy, man. They do kind of hate on him a lot, though.
They do, crazy. But I think you'll look at the end of the day. I think the Vikings, I don't think they'll win the division. I'm sorry. I still think the Packers are going to win the division. But I think the Vikings will win 10-plus games and make the playoffs. And Kirk Cousins will statistically be up there. And I think that his name will be brought up.
Right.
Very often. And not just like a hot take. It won't be a hot take.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because I think in 2020 when he had like a hot September? I think it was like he had like a hot September and October where they were kind of talking about him a little bit. Like,
last year, 2020, it was terrible the first few weeks.
Well, it was, but after Justin Jefferson started, he went on a tear. With Kirk Cousins, and then he started getting the MVP conversation.
Yeah, he was kind of like inching into MVP conversation
because he was bringing us back to playoff contention. Yeah. And then last year, early in the season, he was being.
I mean, he didn't make any list or anything, but the medias were talking. You know who really likes him is Kyle from Good Morning Football. They really show love.
Good Morning Football would talk about him as candidate, but during games, and you could hear them talk about how he was potentially a candidate.
Yeah, for sure. How you feel about our new coaching and stuff? I mean, I know you follow a lot of teams, so you know who we got, Kevin O'Connell. I mean, do you think that this is going to be the best thing to ever happen to Kirk being in Minnesota, like having Kevin O'Connell coming? Because you knew him at Washington. I seen you wearing the Washington jersey on your last live Purple Code, man. Shout out to them fellas, man. The fellas, y'all had a great show, and I tapped in and watched it, But how do you feel? Do you think this was a good move for the Vikings to make?
Oh, absolutely. And you hear a lot of the tensions with Zimmer, and that notwithstanding, and especially stuff doesn't really come out of locker rooms that often. They kind of they keep things hush hush. But as soon as Zimmer left, you had Barr and Brian O'Neill kind of talking about how Zimmer wouldn't even say hi to people or like good morning. And then obviously you have reports of saying that Zimmer hated Kirk Cousins, which whether you like him or not, I think he's overrated, think he's overpaid. How can you hate him?
He's a good dude. Yeah.
It's so I think, but the fact of it not being Zimmer is great. And I actually, and this was when I had probably less than 100 followers, I was saying Kevin O'Connell was my top choice over Harbaugh. I remember there was a huge movement for Harbaugh. I was not really a fan. I like the younger guys. I love the Kwesi hire in the front office.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to say it's going to be the best thing ever because I don't think Kevin O'Connell's ever even called plays.
Right. But that's how I feel too, man. And I do like we went with him.
I think he did for Washington that year that they didn't win many games. So that's a little scary.
Kirk's last year. I remember that season.
Yeah.
People want to talk about how these weapons. Well, Kirk Cousins had 4,300 yards, 27 touchdowns with Terrell Pryor / Jamison Crowder as his number 1 receiver.
That's terrible.
Yeah. Fat Rob Kelly out of the backfield. Capri Bibbs. Oh, I remember those games.
What brings me to the question, because you have the Packers winning the division, but look at their receiving core, and their number 1 guys are currently, their draft pick is currently on the PUP list. What makes you think that the Packers, with that receiving core, is going to be better than the Vikings to win the division?
Well, if you want to go back to those Redskins teams, name Minnesota Vikings fans are familiar with, Bashaud Breeland was a starting corner opposite Josh Norman. So if you want to talk about bad secondaries, the 2017.
So you think it's our defense then?
Yes. There's a lot of volatility on the defense, and then conversely, the Packers, I think, will have a top 3 to 5.
Have a solid defense, yeah.
You got to remember they didn't have Jair Alexander last year, and the effects of not
they
only
didn't have Zadarius Smith either.
We got him now, baby.
Yeah, they didn't have Zadarius, but then also having Jair back also allows Eric Stokes to go to that number 2 cornerback role, and and he played well.
He did play well.
Cornerbacks often get better from year 1 to year 2. Then you also slide him onto wide receiver 2. So I think their defense is going to be absolutely fantastic. Their O-line I'm a little bit worried about, and as much as I love Kirk, he's not Aaron Rodgers. So, and here's what I'll say is that in Aaron Rodgers' offense with Matt LaFleur, the floor is it really can't be below 12th in the league. I really don't see it that team. I don't care who the receivers are. With the good running back duo, we don't know about Bakhtiari's health, but their O-line should be better. Elton Jenkins is back. Rodgers with a solid O-line, some good running backs. I have enough confidence that can be a manageable unit, whereas the Vikings defense has just been awful the past few years.
Yeah, we have, man. And that's one thing. The good thing is, though, we tried to attack that in the draft. Like a lot of our draft picks are towards the defense, man. So hopefully that changes, man. I think we have a lot of good, we're gonna have a lot of good competition out there this year in training camp, especially for our D-backs, because that is a weak spot, and the defensive line. I think we kind of pumped that up a little bit. So we'll see, man. I got us winning the division, though. And obviously, that's the Vikings fan in me. You know what I mean? Like, I look at the numbers and stuff, but, us being Vikings fan, we're winning the division. We think that every year, man. That's just how we roll, But, hey, it is what it is, man.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's really not.
Yeah, because if Kirk's going to have the season that we're expecting him to have too, I mean, we can put up the points. Like, all we need to do is make a couple stops. Like they were saying last year, if you were watching the Vikings last year, like, I mean, we could have been easily 15-2 if it was for a couple stops. Like
the end of half defense.
Yeah.
And Kirk was doing his thing last year. I mean, he was definitely putting us in position to win those games. You know what I mean?
The games where we see him on the sideline as the other team won the game.
Yeah. I mean, it was sad, man. It was a sad season last year. So frustrating. One of the most frustrating seasons as a Vikings fan was last year, I got to say, but I mean, I think Kirk, I did a video, Joe, where I said, I think Kirk Cousins is going to compete with Aaron Rodgers this year, statistically and record wise. I just think they're going to go head to head. I think Kirk is looking at the Packers now and saying, you know what, it's my time now. This is my division. I'm gonna win this NFC North. So hey, I'm all in on him, man. I'm all in. And that's why I wanted to get you on, because I'm all in on Kirk, and I need all the Kirk positivity around me that I can get this year, because I'm quick.
He's gonna do his job. I'm not worried about him.
Right.
Where I'm worried about, and it's not even worry, it's just sort of the data side nerd in me, is it's so hard to project a defense that has so many rookies that are going to play impact roles and then guys coming off injuries. The Vikings defense, if you just look at names and where guys were drafted, there's tons of talent, but you have Danielle Hunter, who's played 6 or 7 games the past 2 years. He's the only impact player in his prime. You have Patrick Peterson, who obviously isn't what he was. in his 30s. Harrison Smith, who's still great. Eric Hendricks, who's still great, but they're getting into their 30s. It's hard to be 100% confident that they're going to keep up that level of play. And then you have guys Booth, Scene, Cam Dantzler, guys who haven't hit their prime. So it's kind of like it's a calculated risk, and there's a lot of bodies. But you need the young guys to speed up in their development, and you need the veterans to not have a fall off that happens to a lot of guys. So it's very close. But I think there is a world where everything clicks and you get 30 combined games between Zadarius and Daniil. Booth is looking like Pat Surtain and is healthy, and Lewis Cine is Derwin James. Right. And the defense is top 10. But there's also a case that's just as likely of a lot of rust, nagging injuries, and the defense is 24th.
Just point something out on your top 100 list, which is actually your top 105, because I went back.
Yeah.
And you list 4 Vikings on your top 105 on defense. So you have 4 of your top 105 players in the NFL on defense. Darius Smith is 2 years removed from the Pro Bowl, where he went 2 years in a row with 13 and 12 sacks. So you actually have, like, the Vikings have good players, just like you mentioned. Is it more that you don't, you're just worried about them putting it together, mixing all the new faces they got, or what do you think of Pettine and Donatel as coaches?
I'm very excited about that. One thing, because I never played football at a very high level. I'm not an expert of X's and O's. I watch tons of games, but I'm not. I don't feel like I'm able or have the requisite knowledge to truly dive in the way someone who, especially on the defensive end. But looking at how those defenses have performed with their personnel, safeties are very important in the way they switch off coverages, and especially on defense and offensive line. I look at position groups in areas where you're only as good as your weakest link. And I was saying this, I say this all the time, is the Vikings consistently, even the past few years, have had a stud at every level. Stud on the D-line, stud in the linebacking core, stud in the secondary. But if Patrick Peterson, who I think was okay last year, Peterson declines as much, his decline is linear, and you take away from last year, what had happened before, and that's not very good. And you're relying on Cam Dantzler, who has shown flashes, but I don't know if I trust him to be a number one. That's the thing, is even if Harrison Smith and Eric Hendricks, and I'll be honest, because honestly, guys 80 through 140 were so interchangeable. Like I put out honorable mentions on like a full document, and any of those guys who were an honorable mention could have easily made the top 100. Like they're all so close.
Zadarius Smith was one of your, like,
exactly.
You said, hey, here's 5 guys.
So it's just that how good are the rest of the guys going to be? And that same thing with the offensive line. If you have 2 stud tackles, but your center and right guard are major weaknesses. It's like in the NBA as well. You got a guy on defense, just pick, switch him on, and you're just going to pick on him all day. Same thing on defense. And that's where I'm worried. I think it's better. I really like the Patriots model, to be honest, for defense and O-line, of just no superstars, but a bunch of guys who are solid NFL players.
Right, for sure. Hey, before we go on, Joe, man, let me just shout out everybody in the chat, man. People are thinking that it's pre-recorded and stuff, because usually I'm so active with my followers, you know what I'm saying? So first of all, man, Adam Dub, happy birthday, bro, man. Appreciate you being here tonight, man. Crown, I know you in the building. Shout out to you, bro. We just letting Joe, man, give us some insight about Kirk Cousins and how he feels about him. So that's the only reason why we're not interacting with the chat as much. We just don't want to be rude and cut him off. We trying to show our guests hospitality, all right? But, hey, Grandizer, we here. You already know, man. Appreciate you, Skull Mafia, everybody. I don't want to share the chat because it covers up his face, how the format is. But, yeah, we here, man. We here. We having a good time. Y'all just sit back. All right? Happy birthday, Adam Dub, man. Purplegang in the building. You already know.
This was killing MC Rab, because he usually ignores me and just talks to the chat.
Hey, I love so Joe, man, I started a thing called Purplegang, man. And hey, man, listen, really, we got some really good followers, bro. Like, they really tap in. They, you know, they always talking to me and Dave when we doing our show. So you got to show them love, man. You know, you can't ignore them, man. You can't ignore your peoples, man.
Why don't you tell them where you can where they can follow you?
Yeah, tell them where they can follow you, Joe. I'm sure some of these people, mostly all of them, probably
this
know.
Guy interviewed.
Them,
we haven't even talked about it. This guy interviewed Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins.
I was honestly like, I was shaking. I was so nervous. I'm usually a little bit more eloquent of a speaker. I'm not a pro by any means, but I was. I watched it back one time.
Yeah.
Just somewhat editing, and
I was nervous for you.
You know, I was shaking.
Yeah.
But where can they follow you?
Yeah, I'm at Real Joe Spinosa on Twitter. That's my main, I guess, social media presence. I sometimes make TikToks. I'm so bad at YouTube because, as you see, I ramble on a lot, and I'm very big into big meta projects. You saw my computer; it's data upon data upon data, and I feel incomplete, unfulfilled if I put out a 5-minute video saying, "Oh, Vikings signed this tight end from Denver to fill the 90-man roster. He played at Iowa. I don't know much about him.
Sounds like one of my shorts today. Yeah, we just signed Bayer from
Denver. Yeah, we did. We signed Sean Bayer. I'm like, hey, we'll see what happens.
But hey, you got actual like accounts parodying you. You got Joe Spinosa fan account dedicated to Joe Spinosa and his incredible research of Kirk Cousins. A fan of the fan. Kirk chose Joe. Joe chose us. Hashtag blessed.
Yeah, so Joe, Dave went, when I told him that I was having you on the show, Dave said, you know what, I'm gonna go find some things because I know I've seen a lot of pages with his name on it, so I'm gonna go pull some and let him know, just in case he don't know that he has all these fan pages and stuff. Like, people really gravitate towards you.
There's guys that say, hey, the news I get for today is, you know, and name these news organizations and Joe Spinosa.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one thing is I'm big on the data scene and NFL R and all that stuff. So I pull out stuff that, honestly, not to pat myself on the back too much, but is content that it's not published anywhere else. Yeah, right. I'm going through data and finding specific things that I find interesting. I'm working on different predictive models of expected first down conversions, all these different things. So these are things that you won't see like on any page. I do spend a lot of time. Make interesting points.
I cited you today on one of my videos. Janik Edkart. I don't know how to say his name, but he's a guy just like you.
Oh yeah.
He puts out data, and he's known for that. Isn't as big a following as you, but I followed both of you guys at the same time, just because all the Kirk haters are out there. You were always bringing stats to back up his abilities, and he quoted you, and I put it up there and gave you credit for it. But that's something you brought to Twitter, when you get all these guys just hating, and with nothing to back it up. Right. Absolutely nothing to back it up, but you always bring the stats with you.
It's interesting, especially with the Kirk rankings and the national narrative. For everyone else, and not just with sports, it's like, the scientific method, the burden of proof for an argument is, if you're going against what the data says, you have to present something new. And it's weird that Kirk Cousins is the only guy where you bring data, but they're like, well, we don't care about the data or the stats, or we care about this one arbitrary metric, wins and losses. And it's not like, I could understand if Kirk Cousins was going 4-12 every year, or had a career record well below 500, and his teams were not performing in a way you'd expect at all. But he's always had some serious flaws on various teams. And it's like, well, we have all of these metrics. Why are you saying, not only you can quibble about where guys rank within tiers, how are you going to say that Kirk Cousins is in a distinct tier below Dak Prescott and Matt Stafford? That makes no sense, and you provide no reasoning for it.
Right. Yeah, that is, and a lot of people compare him to Matthew Stat, asking if, and I'm guilty of it too, asking if Matthew, if he was, let's just say Kirk Cousins was on the Rams last year, would he have won a Super Bowl? Like, would it have been this? Would it have played out exactly the same? Are they the same guy? You know, I mean, how do you feel about that? Because a lot of people do compare those two.
He wouldn't have thrown 17 interceptions, but yeah.
It's here's the thing, and it's so and why. Here's what I'll always say. I can never guarantee a Super Bowl. I can never guarantee even a championship game appearance. Here is what I always say is here's my standard for team success wise. Double-digit games and make the divisional round. Yeah. Because after that, if you're in the final 8 of the league of the NFL in the playoffs, a bounced ball, a dropped pick, this and that, there's so much volatility. Again, any given Sunday, football's not like other sports where you have 7-game series. I can't guarantee everything would have played out the same. But I think that
missed tackle like 2017.
Yeah.
Against Diggs. Yeah.
But here's what I can guarantee is that there are 4 guys who, if you put last year on the Vikings, who would have, I'm saying even won one more game than Kirk did. I'm saying you go 9-8 or maybe more, but the slightest improvement. There are only 4 guys you replace Kirk with, and the Vikings are better in any way. I think that's kind of the more important question for Vikings fans, because you're wondering, well, how would different guys be on our team? And I really think that, again, it's Brady, Rodgers, Allen, Mahomes. Those are the only 4 guys who I think would elevate the Vikings in any meaningful way last year.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point in one of your tweets. I think it was July 18th. You said the 2000 Vikings had second highest passing blocking grade that allowed a 40-year-old Brett Favre to shine. The Vikings have had the following pass blocking rankings in Cousins: 27th, 29th, 25th, and 27th.
Hey, you didn't know you didn't know we were going to be digging up this stuff, huh? Did you, Joe? Were you prepared?
I'm bringing out the receipts.
He's bringing out the archives on you, man.
So you bring things like that up. A lot of people are talking about how Cousins isn't mobile and stuff like that, or he can't make the big play. But I think we had, and you can correct me on this because you probably ran across it. We had one of the highest pressure rates against us of any team in the league, like top 2 or 4 at worst. But we had the 4th least sacks given up in the league. So what do you think is the disparity there between people saying Cousins isn't mobile, he's dead man in the pocket, with us giving up the most pressures but the fewest sacks?
Yeah, and that's one thing I'll say, because as someone who's followed Kirk throughout his career, and I would always, again, because I try to not have an agenda, but I want to make Kirk look good. So there were oftentimes, and 2 things he's really improved on is not taking sacks and red zone efficiency. Because in Washington, those are problems. And he's gotten so much better.
I think that was his problem his first year with the Vikings, honestly.
Yeah. And this is where people complain about checkdowns. Well, last time I checked, getting a 5 to 7 yard gain on a check down is much better than a 5 to 7 yard loss on a sack. And I think that that's obviously just the way he plays the game, the way he processes. And he kind of, I don't think he's going there. He doesn't have a spreadsheet in front of him, but just the way he processes and the way he goes through the way he plays the game is what is going to be more efficient for our team. And going back to Brady was always at his worst when guys were getting pressure up the middle because he couldn't step up in the pocket. And the interior line has really been the biggest problem for the Vikings.
Keem Hicks.
Keem Hicks has been killing us for years. It's been rough, man. And I know Kurt sees that guy and like, man, damn, I know he hates playing the Bears.
We don't play him this year.
I don't know how you did it, but you got this chart here where you had Pro Football Focus grades on throws 10+ yards, and you have Kirk Cousins number 2 behind Aaron Rodgers, or tied with maybe Mahomes, I think.
Yeah, they're really close there.
And what was that on again, Dave? What's that?
He's got a chart here, a Pro Football Focus grades on throws of 10+ yards. This guy's great deep ball thrower, Kirk Cousins is, and I mean, and he stands in the pocket and takes a hit. And I think I think people call him Captain Checkdown because of Captain Kirk, but he's not. He's just not. I think I saw a ranking where he was top 10 in in efficiency, like 20 yards or more, or some, I don't know what it is, but he's in those categories of throwing the ball downfield. He's consistently ranked in the top.
And he also throws past, like yards past sticks is a metric that we'll use like in analytics. And Kirk Cousins has been towards the top of the league in terms of how often he throws past the sticks for a first down.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's the data and everything sort of backs up. And 2021 was such a great season. He was also the second, actually he was 1 or 2 against the blitz. Whether it be passer rating or PFF grade. So he's been great against the blitz. Obviously, every year, without exception, he's been top 2 or 3 from a clean pocket. So it's really, if you can stop a team from just bulldozing through your line with 4 guys, Kirk will pick you apart.
Right. You know, it's good to have somebody like Joe. I got to tell you again, Joe, man, I truly appreciate you, you know, coming on for one again, man. I just got to thank you, man. I'm big on thanking people,
No problem
right?
at all. I appreciate
And like the way you break this down, you know, you can definitely turn somebody, like the way you use numbers and don't go off BS, you know, you go off of, hey, look, these are what the numbers say. All right, you can think what you want to think, but these are the facts. You know what I mean? And the way you do that, I believe you really can, you'll turn somebody who doesn't have faith in Kirk Cousins and turn him into a believer. You know what I mean? Honestly, I feel like, and during your journey, I'm sure you've done that. You know what I mean? Posting these numbers and letting people know, like, hey, look, you can say that he's this and that, but look at the numbers though. It's not, and football is a team sport. People tend to forget that as well. You know, people think the quarterback's supposed to just be, you know, able to play defense, get interceptions, fumbles, everything, cause turnovers. I mean, it's crazy, man. I'm a believer this year, man. I'm more a believer now that we've had you on here tonight. For sure.
Well, Kirk's made my job easier. And even though the raw numbers are fairly similar between 2018, his first year in Minnesota, and 2021, and he to go QB wins, he won more games that year too. Totally different player. And if you watch him, just the amount of big time throws, just escaping, making something out of nothing, he has really just gotten better. And it's been a joy to watch. And it makes what I do honestly pretty easy because I don't really have to cherry pick. There are so many different things, whether it's not just kind of going, oh, well, look at 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. Obviously, if you do that every year, that's impressive. And other guys, but if you just to go beyond, you know, against the blitz, deep throws, all of these things, they all check out.
Yeah, for sure. And one throw I remember before you say it, Dave, is last year in Green Bay, man, when he took a hit. I mean, he took a hit.
Yep. That was like Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson touchdown, man. And that touchdown, you know, they always show that footage of JJ because how he celebrated, you know, just like really turned up after he caught it. And I mean, he took a hit. I mean, right up the middle, shot to the mouth, man. But he threw that thing right in there. You know, to me, Joe, I want to see him do more of that. Now, maybe he does do a lot of that and we just get blinded. You know, I just get blinded just being a Minnesota fan. And I see when the game's going bad, maybe I'm just getting blinded. Yes. But I do want to see him do more of that, though. I feel like he doesn't do it enough, but maybe I'm blinded and maybe I need to pay more attention. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's something that I'm at fault for, not paying him more attention on what those type of throws he makes. Because I mean, I was at the Carolina game when he got hit too and threw the game winner. I was actually at that game. So that was another good throw, you know, where he took a hit and I stole
that video from Joe.
Yeah, you sent that video to me this morning. And I was like, I was at that game.
Out of it. Yeah. We made a TikTok and a short out of one of your videos, and I stole the Packer video from you too. And when I was looking at this, of showing the Justin Jefferson throw, and it's like just him and Aaron Rodgers going back and forth with all the amazing throws.
Somebody said, ask Joe if he knows Kyle Sloter.
Yeah, we want to know. Do you know? How do you feel about Kyle Sloter?
I don't know him personally. He signed somewhere. I know he was doing Jaguars in the XFL.
Yeah, he's with the Jags now.
Yeah, he signed on the Jags. So one thing about Minnesota fans, Joe, we all love Kyle, man. Like Kyle's just to be real, like to say that he's never played a game for us for some reason, like everybody wants him. Like there's people that want him over Kirk. Like there's people today, Joe, believe it or not, Minnesota fans that would take him right now over Kirk. They would trade Kirk Cousins and put him in as a starter. And trust me, I'm not one of them. I know better. Like I'm not that dang slow. I like him.
Are similar There will be guys who are fan favorites that fans just loved, like Gershon Yabusele. Was one of those guys, the dancing bear. So I get that, the fan favorites, of course.
Right. Somebody said, ask Joe about JC Treader.
Oh yeah. I think this is O'Connell Mafia on Twitter. I'm always in spaces with him.
Okay.
Jason, for those who don't know, JC Treader is the former center of the Browns. He's also in Green Bay. He's Pro Bowler, All Pro, been on the market. Didn't practice at all last year because of his knees. And Vikings fans, rightfully so, are clamoring to move on from Garrett Bradbury, who has been the worst graded pass blocking center in the league every year. But would I want him? Yes. The Vikings, despite Score North, I'll just say this, and I tweeted about this, just had an egregiously bad tweet about
please
the
tell
Vikings
us.
cap situation.
Oh yeah, I did see you gave him. You said, well, this clickbait material from, I read that.
Yeah. So people, they don't have the cap space. They'd have to do some maneuvering.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not someone who always defers to people in authority and say, well, the GM didn't do this, therefore he must be right. However, it's a case such as so specific, like Kwesi being in the Browns front office, probably knowing more about the medicals of JC Treader and what he dealt with throughout the season than obviously fans, but even other executives. If he's saying, yeah, the guy's in his 30s now, didn't practice last year. I saw, various reports from our medical staff throughout the year. This is not a good investment. I'm going to defer to him on this one.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. And I think as fans, we see the name and we just want to buy in. You know what I mean? Especially Vikings fans, and I'm guilty now that I'm a podcaster. Any name we see that comes up free, it don't matter. He's coming to the purple. You hear me? Like, I don't care.
Don't tell me you want Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, trust me. Every Vikings podcaster says Suh is coming to the Vikings, and I actually made a prediction, Joe. I said Suh, we freed up a roster spot, and I was like, listen, Suh will be on the Vikings by Monday. Obviously, I'm wrong because Monday's over, and we signed Sean Mayer or whatever it was, but I thought he was coming. I didn't see why not, because he was interested in us and the Raiders from what they were saying, at least. Is that true? I mean, that's what the reports were saying, but you never know with some of those things, man. I think they create narratives and stuff and get us hype, and we run with it as fans.
We just haven't had an inside rush in so many years.
You gotta cut us some slack though, Joe. Like, as Vikings fans, man, we need some excitement, bro.
I think Sheldon Richardson is better right now. If you go by every metric.
Well, I would love us to re-sign Sheldon Richardson.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? I mean, he was less than $2 million last year.
I'd be more excited about bringing him back. And another name who I really want the Vikings to get, and who I was banging on the table for, was Alexander Johnson, who is a starting linebacker in Denver. Very familiar with this scheme, and a different kind of linebacker. He's like 6'2", 250-ish, so bigger than the Kendricks, Asamoah, and Jordan Hicks, I guess, who's kind of in the middle, but run stuffer. And I think that after years of Zimmer not really having a rotation and playing these guys into the ground, having more depth, especially on defense, to take a load off Kendrick specifically would be really good.
Yeah.
And I think Asamoah is going to do that. Hopefully. I'm really high on Asamoah, and I think MC Rap here is too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're high on him, man. We definitely like him. I think he's like a hybrid type linebacker.
I think he can play anywhere. I think weak side and middle linebacker. I think he can play both areas.
I think he can play nickel as well, depending on the personnel, which I am so.
Someone compared him to Griffith from back in the day, before your time.
To who?
Griffith played in the 90s.
I'm about to say, I remember that name, Dave. Griffith. Yeah, that name's ringing a bell too.
Yeah, he was a D-back.
Was it Eddie? Was it Eddie Griffith? Was that his first name?
I forget his first name. But,
oh, come on.
Yeah,
I think that's his name. That's all right. But yeah, so real quick, Joe, though, too. Like, so I gotta ask you this though. How did you? So you mean you don't gotta go too far into detail, but how did you manage to get Kirk Cousins on your YouTube? And like, because I told Dave, I said, look, Dave, I told him while we were in the lobby waiting for you. I said, Dave, look, this is going to be the closest we're going to get to Kirk. All right, is talking to Joe. He actually talked to him.
We're 2 degrees from Kirk Cousins,
we're 2
like
degrees
the
away
Kevin
from
Bacon.
Kirk Cousins. So how did you make that happen, man? What strings did you have to pull?
Honestly, it's Kirk just being such an awesome guy. And so Kirk followed me around the time of the Super Bowl. And I didn't believe it because you know how many Twitter accounts. If there are people making fake accounts of me, obviously there's so many Kirk Cousins accounts. So I saw Kirk Cousins follows you. I'm like, oh, well, that's probably some account with like 8 followers who is doing whatever. And I'm like, wait,
30,000,
300,000 followers. No. I was like refreshing. Like, is this real? I had to double check. I went on my computer. I'm like, this is him. And I didn't want to bother him just because I'm someone I don't like to. I feel like obviously someone who is a starting quarterback who is super busy and all this. Like, I don't want to impose on him. I'm not looking for like recognition. I'm just like, so he followed me and I got a DM from his account. It was Julie, his wife, writing to me saying that Kirk would be okay to talk with me and whatever. And we set it up. It was really quick. And I was just kind of in awe. So
yeah, man. Hey, congratulations on that though. Yo, no, you gotta, that's actually big though, bro. If you think about it, like how many people can get a starting quarterback in the NFL to just say, hey, I want to sit down and talk to you. You're not like CBS Sports or Good Morning Football. It's just like, hey, Joe, I want to sit down and talk to you. You know what I mean? Hey,
Rap's gonna jump in his DMs tonight.
Nah, I ain't gonna jump in his DM. Nah, he won't talk to you.
Cool off for a little bit.
I'm not cool enough, bro. I'm not as cool as Joe. I know.
I'm not cool, but I think what got it is the fact that because I actually did send an email back when I was in high school. Saying I wrote my story and I posted like a screenshot of the email I sent when I was like 15 or 16. And also in my letter of recommendation, one of my teachers literally wrote about Joe's very passionate about what he believes in, and like he would wear his Kirk Cousins jersey. So I posted that, and I think Kirk saw that and like understood because a lot of people did think I was fake or that I'm just like memeing. I'm like, no, this is real. So
I want to ask you about that because I noticed Phil Mackey follows you too, and this is after Purple Daily Score North guys started. Like one guy on there was thinking you were a fake account because they bash. They call them Kirk apologists, and they're bashing. And I got this one guy's totally fake and whatever. And now it's like Phil Mackey actually follows you, and we call MC Rap here Mackey Jr.
Yeah, they call me Mackey Jr. everyone
because of his previous stance on. If anybody's gonna hate anybody on this show, it's usually coming from MC here. But
for sure.
Yeah. So how does that happen? That all of a sudden someone as prominent as the Score North starts having a beef with a guy who had like 100, 200 followers on Twitter at the time, I think. And how does that happen?
Yeah, well, I was actually on Purple Daily a few months ago before my interview with Kirk.
Okay.
So before I even had Twitter, I think I might have had the account, but I didn't really use it. I requested to be on because I would listen to their show, especially because I didn't have a Twitter presence. I'm in Boston. It's not like I'm listening to Minnesota Sports Talk. It's different, the atmosphere just around sports in Boston. The shows, they're so universal in the coverage of Boston sports, even national media, especially with the height of the Patriots, Red Sox always competing. Boston sports are always being talked about. There's no shortage of good content.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I guess Score North must have really good SEO because I would just go on YouTube and look up, Vikings recap or because just wanting to hear. So I'd listen to them and I wrote in to the vent line saying like, hey, my name's Joe. I'm a big fan of Kirk Cousins. I'd like to come on. No one really got back to me. And then as I got even a little bit of following, and one thing I'll say is this is probably just true of a lot of Vikings fans. Even though I had 100, 200 followers, I would have like 20 of them who were actively engaged in would write to them as well on my behalf saying, have him on.
Right.
So, and I've talked to Phil, he's a good guy. And I think that people who talk to me, I can be a smartass on Twitter. I can sometimes have the PFF Eric condescending tone. It's whatever, do that shtick. But I think it's just football. We're not going to hate each other. If you're just a general, chill dude, that you have a beer with, watch the game, whatever, kind of is what it is. I think that Judd is takes things a lot more personally.
Oh yeah, he definitely. Oh, Dave will tell you, man. Dave is so. I didn't like Kirk for a little while.
I always make fun of
he don't like Purple Daily. My co-host hates Purple Daily, man. Just put it out there, Dave. You do not like him. Just let him know.
I would listen because they would have some insider.
I'm not gonna say hate
right?
because hate is a strong word.
I would listen because I started listening to him and it was just nonstop Kirk hate, and that's when I first started researching to get on YouTube and following, trying to learn stuff. And these guys obviously come up and they're making big hit. They ended up being like the #1 sport, or like top 10 sports broadcasts on Apple Podcasts because of the Kirk Cousins getting traded or whatever. And they're pushing for him to get traded. They're just nonstop pushing for him. And then there'd be 5 minutes of insider content that wasn't Kirk Cousins. And you had to sit through half an hour of them bash on Kirk Cousins to get to that one spot. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. I make fun of the fact that we're always looking at a 30-degree angle up Judd's nose on his podcast every day.
They said they're trying to get us on Purple Daily Day. We need to have them. We need to have Purplegang start emailing them and stuff, man. Hey, look, they need to let us on there. Like, we deserve to be on there. Quit playing with us. For sure.
And then there's the whole thing of like, this was funny. I think people were saying Judd was getting a little bit tipsy on the Surly.
Yeah.
But he thought that he had this like this great discovery that no one knew that was going to like expose me to, he's actually not a Vikings fan. He's from Boston and he's a Patriots fan.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've ever since I've been on Twitter, I've made that very clear.
Oh yeah.
And like, they were trying to delegitimize my opinion when it's like, well, I've watched.
Well, which makes you even more outside objective because you're not and they complain about this all the time about that, rose-colored glasses of Viking fans thinks everything is going to be great and they're so in love. But we're dedicated to not being 500 football. That's why we're so critical. And we want to break it down and have this, build it up for, to get a Super Bowl run. And we're willing to sacrifice now. But that just makes you more objective because you weren't a rosy Viking fan.
And I've also watched every game for the past 4 years. And so I think I have a pretty good understanding of the team. And I can actually give, opinions on the rest of the team.
But you also see other games. And we bringing this up earlier is that, hey, we oftentimes only see our own faults because we're watching our game, and especially me and Rap are in different states to where we would have to go to a Vikings bar or get some rip-off channel on the internet to watch a Vikings game. So we're not watching the other games. We're not seeing these other teams' quarterbacks go 3 and out. We only think our quarterback goes 3 and out. So I bring that up a lot is that, hey, as Viking fans, we only see our own faults, and we see the highlights after a game of this guy throwing 3 touchdowns, and those are the only 3 plays that we got to see that guy play. And we see every play that Kirk Cousins does.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right, hey, so Joe, man, we've been on an hour, man. Hey, but before we let you go,
I'm a chatty guy. That's the Italian.
Hey, that's good though, man. We appreciate you being on this long, bro. I didn't even want to take up too much of your time, and we'll get you back on for sure if you have time, man. We love talking to you, man.
It's Thanksgiving.
You're amazing. We Thanksgiving game. We playing the Patriots. Maybe we can do a recap.
I think we can swing that. And
I'm talking to family. I'm trying to plan a trip to Minnesota that weekend.
Okay.
For Thanksgiving because obviously my family Patriots fans, so it kind of lines up well. I'm gonna be wearing my Kirk jersey. I'm gonna be wearing purple.
There you go.
They'll be wearing their Mac Jones, and maybe my cousin still loves Brady, so she's gonna be wearing her Brady jersey.
Yeah,
we're gonna do some post game stuff like vent line, like purple. If you ever want to jump on.
Super Will asks, what's your Twitter, Joe?
At Real Joe Spinosa. No spaces, no underscores.
Will, I got his name spelled on the ticker on the bottom, just at Real Joe Spinosa. So real.
Did you change it to at Real Joe Spinosa after they started having fake accounts made up of you?
He had to, man.
I actually had it like that from the beginning, because
that was good planning,
like Real Skip Bayless. So
that was good planning, man.
Yeah.
But everybody in the chat saying thank you, man. Y'all make sure y'all show Joe love. Go follow him on Twitter if y'all haven't, man. But before you go, man, I just got 2 more questions. These are going to be quick answers. Are the Vikings first question? Are the Vikings going to beat the Patriots this year?
Yes.
All right, perfect. And then to top it off, we're going to end it on this. How many yards and how many touchdowns do you predict Kirk Cousins will have this season?
I haven't, because I'm very big on like the specific numbers.
Oh, okay.
I have models.
So we gotta wait for the Twitter post.
But
we gotta wait for the Twitter post.
Off the top of my head, let's see if the numbers confirm this.
Okay.
But right now, I would say 5,000 yards ish, 4,900, 5,000, 5,100,
So
and
close to his
38
best.
to 42 touchdowns.
Wow. All right, we can deal with that, Purple Gang, man. As Vikings fans, we definitely like hearing that, man. We cannot be mad at that, man. Hey, for sure, man. Hey, Shane said big ups. Appreciate everybody that tapped in and watched us, man. We definitely gonna have Joe on again. Yeah, we're gonna have Joe on.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks, Joe. Hey, appreciate you again, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, for sure. All right, do I just log out?
Yep.
All right, see you.
All right, y'all, man. Hey, we gonna end it, man. Hey, appreciate y'all. Thank you again to Joe. Hey, y'all, only reason why we weren't engaging with the chat as much, man, because we had Joe on and we wanted to make sure we were showing him respect, letting him get his talks off, man. You know what I'm saying? But hey, man, appreciate Joe for joining us, man. That was great, Dave, man. That was a good show for sure. Yeah, so hey, but happy birthday, Adam, man. Adam Dub, man. Happy birthday to you, bro. You know we ain't forget about you, gang.
It's almost like we had Kirk Cousins on here.
Hey, that was the closest. Hey, y'all,
it was
that was the next
thing
best
to
thing to having Kirk Cousins on the show. All right, so y'all, hey, much love to Joe again, man. That's my boy, man. We met a new friend. We met a new friend in the game, man, for sure. But yeah, man, we're gonna tap out though, man. I gotta go. Hey, daddy duties, man. Daddy duties. So I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Maybe me and Dave definitely gonna be doing shows because training camp is officially underway. So be on the lookout for the news. You hear me? Hey, holla at your boy.